Hello everybody, this is WarriorDan and welcome to What is the Point Of? The series where I take a look at recently released mainstream and indie games and tell you which games you might want to consider checking out and which ones you should consider throwing into a dumpster, pouring gasoline on, and setting ablaze with a lighter. Today we're talking about a rather controversial game that some people might consider tossing into a virtual digital bonfire of bad high-budget Steam games. One of many games to have received the tainted hand of Randy Pitchford, the man, the absolute legend, the living meme that we all know and love, who brought us such unforgettable games as Aliens Colonial Marines and Duke Nukem Forever. I am of course talking about We Happy Few. The game initially pitched as a Kickstarter endeavor, started with a goal of raising $250,000 before then going on to raise over $334,000 by the time the campaign ended. The same game that would soon thereafter become a Steam Early Access title at the retail price of $29.99, but soon later, after meeting a moderate degree of success there, then partnering with the Randy Pitchford-led game publisher Gearbox Publishing. Gearbox, seizing the opportunity like a vulture with fresh roadkill in its sights, made the unorthodox decision to double the game's retail price to the hefty fee of $59.99, and announcing new plans for paid DLC expansions, including a $20 season pass, effectively increasing the total price of We Happy Few to $79.99 USD. With the final transition from early access to now being a full quote-unquote complete game, along with it now being priced like any other ambitious $60 AAA title, it's time we break down We Happy Few and see if it's worth its initial asking price of $29.99, let alone its newer $60 to $80 price tag. So without further ado, why don't you sit down, pop a joy, and let's turn that frown upside down. Welcome to We Happy Few. We Happy Few takes place in an alternate historical setting based in a dystopian version of 1960s England, where the player initially takes on the role of Arthur Hastings, a government worker assuming the role of a redactor for the Department of Archives. As a redactor, it is Arthur's responsibility to censor newspapers, magazines, and other such past and present documents charged by the government to blot out any unwholesome material that might hint at any potential wrongdoing or potentially cause any embarrassment for the government. Needless to say, the setting of this introduction, and by extent much of the lore in the game, is greatly inspired by it to the point of mimicking the writings of George Orwell, specifically his groundbreaking political fiction novel, 1984. While I could do an entire video comparing and contrasting the two, I feel it's rather important to clarify that We Happy Few is not a direct adaptation of Orwell's work, but rather a more modernized retelling reflecting current societal issues present today. Observant players will notice a large amount of social commentary here in the game, with the in-game implementation of how you, the player, and the world around you rely strongly on joy pill dependence, making a not-so-subtle reference to how we often depend on pharmaceutical drugs to get by, and how doctors and psychiatrists tend to overprescribe drugs to treat things that traditionally would be treated using other means. Kind of contrary to our world, where people on drugs are treated differently than those who are not. In this game, the whole world around you will begin to treat you differently when you're off your joy, and thus are displaying signs of unease, disgust, or depression at the sight of the grim and foreboding world that is normally hidden to you when you're on your joy.
Never be afraid to up your joy. Only you know how much you need. Or just ask a doctor and he'll fix you right up.
When you're off your joy, the AI will begin to become increasingly more aggressive, referring to you as a downer, and will force you to either take more joy or alternatively will attempt to kill you. It's hard not to notice the allegorical connection to how we treat social media, where users are encouraged to only leave positive text posts, images, and other assorted media, while on the other hand, less overtly positive media will be either hidden from users using automated algorithms, or will be met with negative social repercussions. The result being that we are raising current and future generations to internalize and hide feelings and opinions that others might perceive as negative, and instead maintain a constantly false positive demeanor, a social mask if you will, not unlike the physical masks players see on the faces of citizens and bobbies within the world of We Happy Few. And if you think I'm going a bit too much into detail on this point, just play the game, and you'll see the game is very heavy-handed with its social commentary. Just like Infinity War spoilers, you can't escape it no matter how hard you try. When initially starting a game, the player has a number of difficulty options to choose from, including easy, normal, hard, and custom. In easy mode, the player will not be heavily penalized for dying. The enemy's AI will be considerably slower to detect unusual behavior on your part, and your character's hunger, thirst, and sleep meters will deplete at a noticeably slower rate. Easy mode is not only ideal for new players unfamiliar with RPG survival mechanics, but also story-driven players who prefer to prioritize story completion over survival gameplay. Normal mode acts as essentially a compromise between easy and hard, and enables more challenging game mechanics such as permadeath, where if a player has died a certain number of times over the course of the game, they will eventually permanently die and lose all of their in-game progress. Additionally, the aforementioned hunger, thirst, and sleep meters deplete at a faster rate than it would on easy. Enemy AI will also detect players at a faster rate, leading to more potential conflict. Hard mode cranks the difficulty up even farther by enabling true permadeath, where players only have one life to carry them through the entire campaign, in addition to raising the stakes by making everything else in normal mode that much harder to deal with. For those of you seeking a true hardcore experience, this is the one. Probably the most noticeable surface level problem with We Happy Few, one that many of my fellow content creators have been pointing out en masse, is the many game breaking and immersion breaking bugs present in the current quote unquote final version of the game. Most, bordering on all, quests in We Happy Few include traveling to a location, talking with someone there, and from them finding out specific information or instructions pointing you in the direction of wherever you're supposed to go in order to advance your quest. Basically, fetch quests go from point A to point B, then from point B back to point A. This gameplay design is a fairly common one in most RPG games, nothing too unique there. But the problem is in We Happy Few, there is a disturbingly common bug that when you're standing in front of the AI you're about to speak to, the game will not allow you to trigger the conversation. The only possible fix is to exit the game entirely and relaunch it. However, even this is not necessarily a guaranteed workaround. Several hours into the campaign, as of the time of this review, I recently found myself completely unable to proceed any further, as one of my quests involved me speaking to one of the NPC bridge attendants in order to be redirected towards wherever it was I was supposed to go next. After nearly half a dozen full restarts of the game and one full PC restart, I am no closer to having resolved this mess. Every time I go up to the AI and expect to initiate the conversation, the AI will not respond to my keyboard command and will act as if the hotkey was never tapped, making me physically unable to proceed farther into the campaign. Compared to its early days as an early access title, which was a god-awful mess, where the available quests were horrendously designed, and inconsistent resource random generation often resulted in your character dying much more frequently from lack of weapons, food, and medical supplies, We Happy Few is in a much better state now, with the addition of new characters, cutscenes, the new questing system, but is it a game I would recommend in the current state it is now? Part of me would honestly like to say yes. The bright visual appeal with the dark gritty undertones makes for a really interesting contrast, combined with a halfway decent crafting system and the hilariously exaggerated character voice lines, character models, and character animations, makes We Happy Few into a wonderfully fantastic world with a scale and attention to detail that should in theory rank it alongside games like BioShock and Half-Life. However, with the many bugs and crippling game flaws, to compare We Happy Few with either BioShock or Half-Life would be an insult to either of the aforementioned games. My final score for We Happy Few is a 5 out of 10. It is the purest example of mediocrity, a game that somehow manages to show a great deal of potential but simultaneously somehow finds a way to fail to live up to it at every opportunity. I cannot recommend it to anyone at this given price, not at $29.99 and especially not at a full $60 price tag. At least not until the widespread bugs have been addressed and many more gameplay improvements implemented. Also, it's worth noting that We Happy Few started charging $60 long in advance of the current full release version, likely at the behest of Gearbox Publishing, who coincidentally at the same time had been announced as the game's new publisher, whereas before this the game was being developed and published by Compulsion Games alone. However, Compulsion Games has been quick to deny any potential decision-making involvement of Gearbox in regards to We Happy Few, as they stated in a recent AMA interview, following a whole bunch of criticism directed at Gearbox, suggesting that Gearbox was potentially responsible for forcing the price hike, saying that Gearbox came on to publish the game, no development funding. However, this is only a half answer, as while Gearbox may not have financially invested in the game, and might, as part of contract, not have had any say over gameplay content, they may have had some or controlling say in how the game was distributed, which includes deciding on a retail price. I doubt Gearbox was the only ones who made the decision, but I'm guessing it was something that Gearbox may have pressured Compulsion Games into considering. Compulsion cites these concerns as simply a great deal of Gearbox hate, which is at the very least a hilariously inaccurate statement with no prior knowledge of Gearbox's company history, because anyone looking at Gearbox's publishing history, let alone their development history, will see that there is very clearly cause for concern. I gotta give Compulsion Games credit for its excellent overt deflection of likely legitimate criticism towards a company intensely renowned in the gaming industry for having a history of producing games that, upon release, do not at all resemble the quality or amount of content displayed in pre-release cinematic trailers and promo material. When someone on Reddit compared We Happy Few to No Man's Sky, asking why the developers release titles far before the game in question is ready to go live, the team responded, "I think you're overestimating the independent team's resources and assuming that we're all the same. In our case, I don't think the game is a buggy, broken product." Well, Compulsion, you're one of the few, because judging by the reviews of many other people around, including the experiences of myself, I kind of have to disagree here. This response annoys me personally because it infers that one needs to have a massive team in order to release a functional, mostly bug-free game. This isn't true. As we've seen with games like The Forest or Killing Floor 2, you can have AAA scale games with fully functional, in-depth mechanics and a mostly bug-free experience. What this requires is a willingness to allow your community to essentially become your bug testers, creating a naturally open relationship between the developer and the player. Your players will usually tolerate the presence of bugs or the occasional frame rate issue if you, the developer, make it clear to them you're not only listening to their feedback, but incorporating their feedback into your future updates, fixing the most prominent issues that your community is trying to resolve. It's no wonder this game is called We Happy Few. It's probably referring to the small minority of players who actually enjoyed this sickly, rotten carcass of a game. A better title for the game might have been We Unhappy Many. The problem is, as Compulsion Games themselves stated in the Reddit AMA, the team is currently divided into fractions at the moment, with the majority of the workforce hard at work on the recently announced Season Pass, which can be bought for $20, while a much smaller group tries to keep up with the bug fixes and gameplay improvements, showing that the publisher, at the very least, is much more interested in ensuring players continue to dish out more money for paid content, while at the same time denying their core fan base access to much-needed critical bug fixes and important gameplay overhauls. One can almost draw a similar comparison to the disaster that was Batman Arkham Knight. The ill-fated finale to the Batman Arkham saga, PC release was plagued by widespread performance and optimization issues, as well as the occasional poor gameplay design, resulting in widespread blowback from fans who demanded changes be made. Meanwhile, however, WB Games was hard at work pumping out future paid DLC, including plans for a full season pass, until they ended up crumpling under the pressure and outright abandoned the title, instead of actually fixing the damn title. History has a habit of repeating itself, especially for those who don't learn from the mistakes of the past. And while the world of We Happy Few may be bright and colorful, its future may not be. Instead of deflecting criticism, ignoring widespread bugs, and launching counterattacks on angry YouTubers and streamers who feel betrayed by the poor state the game is in, the developers of We Happy Few might want to turn their attention to, I don't know, actually continuing to develop this mess of a game in hopes that maybe, just maybe, they can salvage a decent game out of the aborted mess of a title we have in front of us now. For now though, and probably for the foreseeable future, I will remain one of We Unhappy Many. That's it for this What Is the Point Of? Hope you've all enjoyed this episode. Sorry if my voice is a bit off, I've been kind of feeling a bit under the weather, but I wanted to get this episode out. It's been sitting on my desk for a while, so it's good to finally have it out the door, so to speak. I'll see you again hopefully next week with an all-new review for you. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button down below, and tell me your opinions on We Happy Few down in the comments section below. If you want to see videos like this from me in the future, hit that subscribe button down below, and hit that gear button so you can get notified as soon as a new video goes live. This is WarriorDan signing out. Stay awesome everybody, and peace out.